The rain came down in relentless sheets, turning the dirt road into a river of mud that seemed to swallow everything in its path. Ethan Caldwell stood on the sagging porch of his family's farmhouse, his calloused hands wrapped around a chipped coffee mug. At 35, his face carried the weight of too many hard years' lines etched deep from sleepless nights worrying about bills, broken equipment, and the bank's ever-looming threats. The Caldwell farm, passed down through 6 generations, was teetering on the edge of foreclosure. Each raindrop hammering the fields felt like a countdown to the end of his family's legacy. He took a sip of the bitter, lukewarm coffee, grimacing not just at the taste, but at the gnawing fear that he might be the one to lose it all. The farmhouse behind him was a shadow of its former self. Peeling paint flaked off the walls, and the roof leaked in 3 places, dripping into mismatched buckets scattered across the attic. Ethan's ancestors had built this place with their hands, carving a life from the stubborn Missouri soil. But now, the neighboring farms had been gobbled up by corporate giants or turned into subdivisions with cookie-cutter houses. Ethan was the last holdout, clinging to a dream that felt more like a noose with every passing day. His ancient tractor, a rusted relic from his grandfather's time, sat in the barn, held together by duct tape and sheer stubbornness. The bank had been clear. Missed 3 more payments, and they'd take everything. As Ethan turned to head inside, a flicker of light caught his eye through the fog. Down the flooded access road that bordered his property, headlights sliced through the downpour. A sleek, black SUV far too fancy for these parts was struggling, its wheels spinning uselessly in the thick, sucking mud. "City folks," Ethan muttered, shaking his head. No one with a lick of sense would take that road in this weather. For a moment, he considered leaving them to their fate. He had enough problems without playing hero for some lost tourist, but his father's voice echoed in his mind, a lesson drilled into him since childhood. Caldwell's help those in need. With a sigh, he set down his mug. "Damn conscience," he grumbled, pulling on his raincoat and mud-caked boots. The rain stung his face like tiny needles as he trudged to the barn. The familiar scent of hay and motor oil greeted him as he shoved open the creaking door. His grandfather's tractor loomed in the corner, a beast from another era that somehow still roared to life when he needed it most. Ethan climbed into the worn leather seat, the contours molded to his frame after countless hours in the fields. The engine coughed and sputtered before settling into a reluctant growl. He guided the tractor toward the stranded vehicle, its massive tires cutting through mud that would have swallowed a lesser machine. As he approached, the SUV came into focus, a high-end Range Rover, its polished surface now splattered with mud. It looked absurdly out of place, like a peacock in a pigsty. Through the rain-streaked windows, Ethan could make out a figure behind the wheel. He pulled the tractor alongside, and the driver's window rolled down. The face that greeted him wasn't what he expected. Instead of panic or frustration, the woman inside looked calm, almost amused by her predicament. Her dark hair was pulled back in a neat ponytail, and even in casual clothes, she carried an air of quiet elegance. "Seems I've made a rather poor choice of roads," she called out over the rain, her voice smooth with a faint accent Ethan couldn't place. Not quite East Coast, not quite foreign, but definitely not local. "You could say that," Ethan replied, unable to keep a hint of judgment from his tone. "GPS send you this way. Something like that," she said with a small smile. That and an overestimation of this vehicle's capabilities. "I don't suppose you could help me out of this mess." Ethan surveyed the situation. The Range Rover's tires were sunk deep, and with the rain still pouring, it wasn't getting out without a tow. It'd be a straightforward job, but not a quick one. "I can pull you out," he said after a moment, "but you'd be better off waiting till morning when the rain might let up." "I'm afraid that's not an option," she replied, glancing at a sleek watch on her wrist. "I have appointments to keep." Ethan stifled a sigh. Of course she did. "Let me get my chain." He climbed down from the tractor, immediately sinking ankle deep in mud. The woman started to open her door, but he waved her back. "Stay put. No sense in both of us getting soaked." To his surprise, she ignored him, stepping out with a large black umbrella that seemed to appear from nowhere. She wore hiking boots, practical but clearly brand new, and a waterproof jacket that probably cost more than his monthly grocery bill. "I prefer to see how things are done," she explained, picking her way through the mud to stand near him. "I'm Sophia. By the way, Sophia Wentworth. Ethan Caldwell, he grunted, focusing on retrieving the heavy chain from the tractor's storage box. Her name tugged at something in his memory, but he was too preoccupied to chase it. The rain plastered his hair to his forehead as he worked, securing one end of the chain to the tractor's hitch and the other to the SUV's frame. Sophia watched with interest, angling her umbrella to shield him from the worst of the downpour. "You've done this before," she commented. "Once or twice," Ethan said, wiping rain from his face. "Mostly pulling my own equipment out of fields." "You're a farmer?" "Then, sixth generation," he replied, a flicker of pride cutting through his exhaustion. "Though that doesn't mean much these days." "On the contrary," Sophia said, her tone thoughtful. "I find that quite remarkable in an age where everything seems so temporary." Her words caught him off guard. There was a sincerity in her voice, a respect he hadn't expected from someone who looked like she belonged in a boardroom. Not a muddy back road. Before he could respond, he turned back to the task. "You should get back in your car. This might take a few tries." Sophia folded her umbrella and slipped into the driver's seat. Ethan climbed onto the tractor, the engine's familiar rumble steadying his nerves. The chain went taut, the tractor strained, and for a moment, it seemed the mud might win. Then, with a lurch, the Range Rover began to move, slowly at first, then more steadily as it found firmer ground. Ethan guided both vehicles to a gravel section of the road, where the SUV could finally stand on its own. When Sophia stepped out again, the rain had eased to a gentle patter, and a genuine smile lit her face. "You've saved me a considerable inconvenience, Mr. Caldwell," she said. "How can I repay you?" Ethan was already unhooking the chain, shaking his head. "No need. Just being neighborly." "Neighborly," she repeated, as if tasting the word. "That's becoming rather rare in my experience. Please, I insist on compensating you." She reached into her pocket, pulling out a sleek leather card holder. Extracting a business card, she scribbled something on the back before handing it to him. Ethan glanced at the embossed text. Sophia Wentworth, CO, Wentworth Agricultural Solutions. On the back, she'd written a phone number in elegant handwriting, followed by "Call me, S. Fdatim, I'm not looking for work, if that's what this is about," Ethan said, though he pocketed the card. Sophia's eyes studied him, sharp but warm. "You misunderstand. That's my personal number, not my company's HR department. I'd like to discuss something with you when you have time." "I'm pretty busy," Ethan replied, a defensive edge creeping into his voice. The last thing he needed was a corporate pitch to sell his land. "I'm sure you are," she agreed easily, "but I think what I have to propose might be worth your while. No obligation, just a conversation." Before he could respond, she gestured to the road. "Is there somewhere nearby I can turn around safely? I believe I'll take the main road back, despite the extra 20 minutes. Ethan blinked, thrown by the abrupt shift. Yeah. There's a wider section about 50 yards ahead. You can manage a 3-point turn there." "Perfect. Thank you again, Mr. Caldwell." She extended her hand, and after a moment, he shook it. Her grip was firm, her hand warm despite the chilly rain. As she turned to her car, Ethan called out, "The road gets worse before it gets better. You might want to back up to the oak tree and turn there." Sophia paused, looking back with a thoughtful gaze. "Good advice. I appreciate it." She hesitated, then added, "I hope you'll call. Ethan, I believe we could help each other," before he could ask what she meant. She was in her car, navigating as he'd suggested. Ethan watched the SUV's taillights fade into the misty rain, a strange mix of skepticism and curiosity stirring in his chest. Only later, as he parked the tractor back in the barn, did her name click. Wentworth. The Wentworths were practically royalty in this part of Missouri, old money tied to vast estates and new ventures. Sophia Wentworth wasn't just some city slicker who had taken a wrong turn. She was one of the wealthiest people in the county, and she wanted him to call her. Ethan pulled the card from his pocket, staring at it in the dim light of the barn. Common sense told him to toss it and forget the whole thing. People like Sophia didn't mix with struggling farmers like him without an agenda. Yet something about her direct but not condescending felt different. With a sigh, he tucked the card back into his pocket. He had a leaking roof to patch, livestock to check, and a mortgage payment looming. Whatever Sophia Wentworth wanted could wait. 3 days later, the rain had stopped, leaving Ethan's fields half flooded and his mood darker than ever. The morning mail brought another bank notice, the words payment due printed in cold, black ink that felt like a punch to the gut. He sat at his kitchen table, the worn wood scarred from generations of Caldwell family meals. Sophia's card lay before him, its crisp white edges stark against the table's weathered surface. Outside, the sun broke through the clouds, casting long shadows across fields he couldn't afford to tend properly. Ethan picked up the phone, his thumb hovering over the numbers. He'd almost convinced himself she wouldn't answer, that he could leave a voicemail and call it a day. But on the second ring, her voice came through, crisp and clear. Sophia Wentworth speaking. Ethan cleared his throat. Miss Wentworth, this is Ethan Caldwell. Pulled your car out of the mud a few days back. Mr. Caldwell, I'm glad you called. There was warmth in her voice, like she'd been expecting him. I was beginning to think you'd thrown my card away. Nearly did, he admitted, surprising himself with his honesty. A soft laugh came through the line. Honest? At least, how are your fields after all that rain? The question caught him off guard. Most people in her position wouldn't care about a farmer's practical concerns. Saturated, he said. I'll lose some early plantings. Nothing I haven't dealt with before. I'm sorry to hear that. She paused, and he heard papers shuffling. Ethan, I'd like to discuss something with you, but not over the phone. Would you be available for a meeting? Warning bells sounded in his mind. What kind of meeting? A business proposition that I believe could benefit us both. Nothing to do with buying your land, she added, as if reading his thoughts. Quite the opposite. In fact, curiosity, despite his better judgment, took hold. I've got work here. Of course. What about tomorrow evening? I could come to you, save you the trip. Say around 6. Tomorrow at 6 works, Sophia said, but I'll come to you. It's only fair, considering you rescued me last time. Any dietary restrictions I should know about? You don't need to bring anything, Ethan said, thrown by the offer. I insist. Consider it further thanks for your help the other day. See you tomorrow. Ethan, the line went dead before he could protest. Ethan stared at the phone, a mix of apprehension and intrigue swirling in his chest. Sophia Wentworth, CO, was coming to his rundown farmhouse with a business proposition. He looked around his kitchen, seeing the chipped countertops, the ancient fridge humming in the corner, the linoleum floor worn thin from years of use. The rest of the house wasn't much better functional, but shabby, every surface telling a story of struggle. For a wild moment, he considered canceling, but pride stopped him. This was his home. If Sophia wanted to talk, she could take him as he was. He spent the next day in a cleaning frenzy, scrubbing floors and fixing the dripping faucet that had haunted his late-night worries. By 6, when the crunch of tires on his gravel driveway announced her arrival, Ethan was pacing, alternating between dismissing the meeting as a waste of time and daring to hope it might change something. The vehicle wasn't the Range Rover, but a practical pickup truck, still new but better suited to the rural roads. Ethan stepped onto the porch, wiping sweaty palms on his jeans. Sophia emerged with the same composed grace she'd shown in the rain. She wore dark jeans and a simple blouse, her dark hair loose in waves past her shoulders. In her hands was an insulated bag, presumably the promised dinner. Good evening, Ethan, she called, approaching with confident strides. I hope I'm not late. Right on time, he said, taking the bag, which was heavier than expected. I wasn't sure what you'd like, so I brought options, she explained, following him inside. If she noticed the signs of his hasty cleaning or the house's underlying wear, she didn't show it. This place has character, she commented, running a hand along the kitchen table's edge. How old is it? Built in 1890, Ethan said, unpacking containers of still warm food from a high-end restaurant in town. My great-great-grandfather started it. We've added on over the years. It feels solid, grounded. Sophia moved to the window, looking out at the fields. You can see the whole eastern section from here. Good vantage point. Her observation surprised him. Most visitors remarked on the house's age, not its strategic view. My grandpa used to say he could tell a storm was coming just by looking out this window, Ethan said, setting out plates. Something about the light on the east ridge. Sophia turned with a smile. Men like your grandfather understood the land in ways most modern farmers have forgotten. That kind of knowledge is invaluable, Her tone earnest, almost reverent, made Ethan pause. She spoke like someone who knew farming, not just as a business, but as a way of life. You know something about agriculture? He observed. I should hope so, she said with a small laugh. My company focuses on sustainable farming solutions, but before that, I grew up on my family's farm in Vermont. Smaller than this, but similar in many ways. The revelation shifted Ethan's view of her, not just a wealthy executive, but someone who might understand the dirt under his nails. Shall we eat while we talk? Sophia suggested, gesturing to the food. They sat, filling plates with steak, roasted vegetables, and fresh bread that put Ethan's usual meals to shame. For a few minutes, they ate in silence, the only sound the soft clink of forks. Then Ethan set down his fork. So, you mentioned a business proposition. Sophia nodded, taking a sip of water. Direct. I appreciate that. Ethan, what do you know about heirloom crop cultivation? The question wasn't what he expected. My grandpa kept heritage corn and tomatoes going. I've maintained a few, but mostly switched to commercial strains. Better yields, better short-term yields. She corrected gently. But at what cost? Less flavor, lower nutrition, more chemicals, and vulnerability to disease and climate shifts. Ethan bristled slightly. He'd heard this argument from idealistic types who didn't understand the financial realities. Those heirloom varieties might taste better, but they don't pay the bills. Lower yields, more pests, more labor, all valid points. Sophia agreed, surprising him. If you're selling into conventional markets at conventional prices. But what if you weren't? Ethan frowned. What do you suggest, Ann? Wentworth Agricultural Solutions is building a network of heritage crop producers with guaranteed purchase contracts at premium prices. We require organic practices, detailed documentation, and exclusive sale of heritage varieties to our network. In return, we provide upfront capital, technical support, and those contracts. Sounds too good to be true, Ethan said skeptically. What's the catch? Sophia smiled. Not a catch, but a commitment. We're selective about our partners. Your land has been farmed for generations without heavy chemical use, meaning less remediation for organic certification. You have experience with heritage varieties. And frankly, Ethan, I saw how you handled that tractor in awful conditions. You know this land. She paused, then added softly, and I know you're in financial trouble. The bank has started foreclosure proceedings. Ethan stiffened, anger flaring at the exposure of his failure. How do you know that? It's public record, she said calmly, and in a community this size, word travels. I make it my business to know which farms might benefit from our program. His anger cooled as pragmatism took over. His situation wasn't a secret, and if she had resources to help, what would this partnership look like? He asked cautiously. Sophia produced a slim folder from her jacket. This is a preliminary outline. We'd need soil tests and a transition plan tailored to your farm, but we'd provide immediate capital to address your most pressing debts. Ethan opened the folder, his eyes widening at the figure listed under initial investment. This is substantial, because what we're proposing is substantial, Sophia said, a complete shift to heritage crops. The projections show losses in year 1, breaking even in year 2, and significant profits by year 3, based on our contracts with high-end restaurants and specialty producers. Ethan scanned the document. The technical details, crop rotations, pest management, soil health were sophisticated, not some dreamy organic fantasy. I'd need to talk to my accountant, he said, closing the folder. And a lawyer, of course. Sophia agreed. We can provide references from other farmers in our network. If you say no, we part as potential partners, but hopefully friendly acquaintances. There's no pressure. Ethan, this only works with mutual commitment. Her candor was refreshing, but Ethan remained wary. Why do I feel like there's something you're not telling me? Sophia studied him, then nodded. There is one detail, still in development. We're establishing a heritage seed bank and living museum on the old Peterson property next to yours. Preserving agricultural diversity and educating the public, your farm would be ideally positioned as a demonstration site. The Peterson property, once a thriving farm, now a neglected sprawl of overgrown fields and a crumbling barn. You bought that land. The Wentworth Foundation did. 3 months ago, visitors would be managed carefully, school groups, retirees, on designated paths to avoid disrupting your work. They'd also bring revenue through tours, workshops, and direct sales. The idea was both intriguing and daunting. Ethan valued his privacy, but the financial potential was hard to ignore. This is a lot to take in, he said finally. I know, Sophia acknowledged. Take the material, review it with your advisors. I believe in transparency. Ethan, ask any question, and I'll answer. She handed him another card, this one with a different number. This is Jordan Hayes, my operations director. He can arrange visits to our partner farms if you want to see this in action. Ethan accepted it, then asked, Did you get stuck in the mud on purpose? Was this all some setup? Sophia laughed, a warm sound that lit up the kitchen. I assure you, my rental car being swallowed by your road was not a strategy. Pure coincidence, though perhaps a fortunate one. She glanced at her watch. I should go. You've got evening chores. I'm sure I do need to check the sheep, Ethan said, rising. Heritage Cotswolds. Not economical, but family traditions matter. Sophia finished, a knowing look in her eyes. Heritage breeds have market value. You know, we should discuss integrating them if you move forward. They walked to the door, the folder tucked under Ethan's arm. As they stepped onto the porch, the setting sun painted the fields in gold. Sophia paused, taking in the view. It's beautiful here. You can feel the generations who've worked this land. Her words touched something deep in Ethan. The reason he'd fought so hard to keep the farm. Thank you for dinner, he said, softer than he intended. And the proposal, I'll consider it. That's all I ask. She extended her hand, and as they shook, her gaze held his with an intensity that suggested she understood what was at stake, not just financially, but emotionally. After her truck disappeared down the driveway, Ethan stood on the porch, the folder heavy in his hands. It might hold salvation for his family's legacy or a trap wrapped in promises. Either way, Sophia Wentworth had given him something he hadn't felt in years, a flicker of hope. The next morning, Ethan spread the folder's contents across his kitchen table, alongside his grim financial records. He'd been up half the night, torn between excitement and suspicion in the clear light of day. He tried to analyze it methodically. The numbers were compelling. Premium prices could outstrip his current revenue, even with lower yields. The transition would be tight, but the capital infusion could keep the bank at bay. A knock at the door broke his focus. Opening it, he found a man in his 50s, dressed in worn jeans and a flannel shirt, his face weathered like Ethan's own. You must be Ethan Caldwell, the man said, extending a hand. I'm Tom Harper. I farm about 40 miles north, near Springfield. The name clicked. Tom was on Sophia's reference list. You're with Wentworth's program, Ethan said, shaking his hand. Going on 3 years. Tom nodded. Sophia called, said you might have questions. Thought I'd come by and save you the drive. Ethan hesitated, then stepped back. Come in. Coffee. Wouldn't say no, Tom replied, entering with the ease of one farmer visiting another. As Ethan poured, Tom surveyed the kitchen. Solid place. Reminds me of my grandpa's house. Been in the family a long time, Ethan said, setting down a mug. So, you're actually part of this heritage crop thing. Partner farm number 3, as Sophia says, was about to lose everything when she showed up. Bank had posted the foreclosure notice. Ethan leaned forward, the parallel hitting home. And now I grow 17 varieties of heritage grains, plus specialty potatoes and root vegetables. Clearing double what I made in my best year conventionally. Tom sipped his coffee, but the transition was rough. First year, I thought I'd made a mistake. What changed? Ethan asked. Appreciating the honesty. The soil improved faster than expected. The markets materialized. The prices were real. Tom leaned forward. I was suspicious too. Thought there had to be a catch. 3 years in, I'm still waiting to find it. For the next hour, Tom answered Ethan's questions with practical detail, pest management without chemicals, the learning curve of new crops, the documentation that wasn't as bad as Ethan feared. It's not magic, Tom concluded. You'll work hard, maybe harder at first, but you're building something sustainable. My son's coming back to the farm after college. Wasn't interested before. Now he sees a future. That hit Ethan hard, though he had no kids. The idea that his family's farm could have a future beyond him was powerful. Can I see your operation? He asked. I want to see how it works. Tom smiled. Thought you might. I'm free all day if you are. By noon, they were walking Tom's fields, a patchwork of ancient wheat, heirloom corn, and rare vegetables thriving in high tunnels. The soil was dark and rich, teeming with life. 3 years ago, this was nearly dead from chemical farming, Tom said, crumbling a handful. Now look at it. The farmhouse and buildings showed similar renewal, new roofs, solar panels, specialized equipment funded by Wentworth. Initial investment was about what they're offering you, Tom said. I pay it back gradually, at terms no bank would touch. Over lunch, Tom's wife, Ellen, added her perspective. We were killing ourselves and still failing, she said bluntly. Now we work hard, but with purpose. We have time to live. Driving back, Ethan sat in silence, the evidence overwhelming. This wasn't a scam, it was real. One last question, he said as they neared his farm. Why is she doing this? Sophia could be making money easier ways. Why heritage crops? Tom considered it. I asked her once. She said preserving crop diversity is the most important work of our time. That these old varieties might save us someday. But I think it's personal. The way she talks about farming, it's like it's in her blood. After Tom left, Ethan stood on his porch, looking at fields that suddenly seemed full of possibility. The decision wasn't easy. Partnership meant giving up some control, trusting Sophia's vision, but continuing alone meant failure. That evening, his accountant reviewed the proposal, his skepticism giving way to cautious optimism. If their markets are real, this could work, he said. Get a lawyer. 2 days later, Ethan sat across from Sophia in her company's regional office, a modern space with windows overlooking experimental gardens. You visited Harper Farms, she observed, settling into a chair. Impressive operation. Tom and Ellen have been great partners, Sophia said, placing a portfolio on the table, but you didn't come to talk about them. You've made a decision. I'm interested, Ethan said, but I have conditions. Independent soil analysis. Capital as a partnership investment, not a loan, and a clause to buy out Wentworth's interest after 10 years. Sophia nodded. All reasonable. Soil analysis is standard. The financial structure is our typical model. With buyback options from year 7, here's our standard agreement. She slid a document toward him. Your lawyer should review it. Ethan accepted it, unsurprised she'd anticipated his concerns. One more thing. Why heritage agriculture? Why my farm? Sophia rose, looking out at the gardens. When I was a child, my grandmother had a garden in Vermont. She grew varieties you couldn't find anywhere else beans. Corn with kernels like jewels. When she died, I was at business school, becoming the proper Wentworth my parents wanted. By the time I returned, her garden was gone, plowed under. Anger flashed across her face. I realized something precious was being lost. These varieties aren't just crops, they're genetic diversity, built over thousands of years. They're disappearing fast. She turned to him. As for your farm, I researched potential partners. Your land has exceptional soil. Your family's records show thoughtful stewardship, and you've maintained heritage varieties against all economic sense. Ethan thought of the small plot of his grandfather's corn. Red and blue kernels he grew for sentiment, not profit. That's why I was on your road that day, Sophia added, smiling. I was coming to approach you when my GPS took me the wrong way. Maybe her explanation rang true. My grandpa said, we don't own the land, we borrow it from future generations. Wise man, Sophia said. That's our philosophy, just with corporate back-in. Take the agreement, review it. I'm not in a hurry, but your bank might be. The reminder stung, but he appreciated her directness. I'll have an answer within the week. As he stood to leave, Sophia asked, would you show me that heritage corn you maintain? Our researchers are interested. How'd you know about that? Ethan asked, surprised. Local feed store owner mentioned it. Said your grandpa's corn made the best meal he'd ever ground. Ethan chuckled, impressed and slightly unnerved by her thoroughness. Come by tomorrow afternoon. I'll show you. True to her word, Sophia arrived in a practical Jeep, dressed for field work in sturdy boots and a wide-brimmed hat. Ethan led her to the modest corn plot behind the barn. It's not much this time of year, he said, gesturing to the young plants. Sophia knelt, examining a seedling with a practiced eye. Remarkable. The stem color suggests it's related to glass gem varieties, but the leaf structure's unique. Ethan was impressed. Grandpa called it Caldwell Red. Story goes his father traded a hunting dog for the seed in the 1920s. Drought resistant, stores well, but yields about 60% of commercial hybrids. Sophia stood, excitement in her eyes. This is exactly what we're preserving resilient, adapted varieties. Would you let our researchers document it? We'd credit your family and include royalties for commercial use. The question felt like a first step toward partnership. I would, Ethan said. Grandpa would have liked knowing it wasn't lost. They walked the farm, Ethan pointing out features a natural spring, a south-facing slope, while Sophia suggested heritage varieties for specific areas. Her knowledge blended science and practical farming, reinforcing Ethan's growing trust. As the sun set, they reached the Peterson property, where the Heritage Museum was taking shape. What'll this museum involve? Ethan asked. Restored buildings, demonstration fields, educational workshops, Sophia said, pointing to an overgrown orchard. We're restoring 37 pre-1900 apple varieties. The visitor center will be far from your property line. The vision was ambitious but thoughtful. If I sign on, what changes first? Ethan asked. Soil remediation, infrastructure upgrades starting with that leaking roof, Sophia said, smiling as Ethan raised an eyebrow. Year 1 is transitional, mixing conventional and heritage crops. By year 3, full conversion. On the porch, Ethan said. I'll review the agreement tonight, but I'm leaning toward yes. Sophia shook his hand, her gaze warm. I think your grandfather would approve. The next week was a blur of meetings and deliberation. Ethan's lawyer reviewed the agreement, suggesting changes that Sophia's team accepted readily. Soil tests confirmed his land's suitability for organic conversion, shortening the transition. By Friday, Ethan signed the final agreement, committing to a partnership that would change everything. 3 days later, workers arrived to repair his roof with quality materials. Soil scientists mapped his fields, and irrigation experts recommended upgrades. Ethan worked alongside them, surprised by their respect for his knowledge. This wasn't a takeover, it was collaboration. Sophia visited often, sometimes with specialists, sometimes alone. During these walks, their conversations grew personal, touching on books, travel, and family. You never talk about yours, Ethan said one evening, a month into the partnership. Except your grandmother's garden. Sophia was quiet for a moment. The Wentworths are complicated. Old money, old expectations. I disappointed them by choosing agriculture over finance. They don't fully understand, but they've stopped trying to change me. And your personal life? Ethan asked, then regretted it. Sophia glanced at him, surprised but not offended. Neglected. Mostly, building this company has been all-consuming. She smiled. Why do you ask? Just curious, Ethan said, feeling awkward. You know everything about me, but you're still a bit of a mystery. Fair observation, she said, smoothly shifting to the new irrigation system. As spring turned to summer, the farm transformed. Heritage wheat and beans flourished under organic protocols. Ethan's debts were cleared, and the constant financial dread lifted. Neighbors noticed his renewed energy, the enthusiasm he'd lost to years of struggle. He looked forward to Sophia's visits, not just for business, but for their growing connection. By late summer, the first heritage harvests were ready. Ethan watched with pride as crews gathered varieties not seen commercially in decades. The produce was exquisite, and Blackwood's marketing team showcased it at high-end restaurants. At one event, Ethan sat beside Sophia as chefs praised his crops. Is it always like this? He murmured. The recognition, Sophia smiled. This is just the beginning. Later, as they walked from the restaurant, she asked, how does it feel, seeing your harvest celebrated? Strange, Ethan said. 6 months ago, I was growing commodities no one cared about. Now chefs know my vegetables by name. Your grandfather would be proud, Sophia said softly. His corn sparked this. Ethan paused under a streetlight. Thank you, not just for the money, but for showing me farming could be meaningful again. Something shifted in her expression, a softening that made his heart race. For a moment, he thought she might step closer, but she glanced at her car. I should go. Early meeting, but I'd like to continue this dinner at your place. Maybe just us. Saturday, Ethan suggested. I'll cook. I'd like that. Her smile held warmth beyond business. Saturday brought perfect weather. Ethan harvested vegetables from his personal garden, nervous in a way he hadn't been in years. Sophia arrived with a bottle of wine. Her sundress simple yet elegant. Dinner was roasted chicken, fresh vegetables, and bread from Heritage, wheat. This is incredible, Sophia said, tasting the bread. The flavor, you can't get this from modern varieties. They ate slowly, conversation flowing from childhood memories to shared values. On the porch, watching fireflies, Sophia asked. Does it still feel like your place? It does, Ethan said. Different, but more mine than it's been in years. I was losing it before, not just to the bank, but to a system crushing everything my family built. That's what we're fighting, Sophia said, preserving a way of life. Her passion lit her features, and Ethan found himself staring. What? She asked, catching his gaze. You're not what I expected, he said. Less corporate, more real. Disappointment or relief, she teased. Relief, though it makes things complicated. Complicated how professional lines are clearer than whatever this is becoming. Sophia set down her coffee, facing him. What do you think this is becoming, Ethan? He took a breath. Something more, at least for me. For me too, she said, her gaze steady. Is that a problem for you? Your board might have opinions, Ethan said, aware of the power imbalance. They might, she acknowledged, but I don't let others dictate my choices. The question is, do you want this? Instead of words. Ethan reached for her hand, their fingers intertwining. The gesture was both question and answer. Complicated enough for you? Sophia asked. Smiling. I can handle it, Ethan said, pulling her closer. Autumn brought the first major Heritage harvest, the quality surpassing expectations. Restaurants competed for the limited supply, validating Sophia's projections. The farm's transformation accelerated new storage facilities, a renovated farmhouse, and a small local crew trained in heritage techniques. Ethan and Sophia's relationship deepened, balancing professional boundaries during work hours with personal time on evenings and weekends. They navigated each other's worlds, Ethan at business functions, Sophia in work clothes helping with farm tasks. By winter, the farm was stable, though full profits were still a year away. One December evening, by the fireplace, Ethan spoke without thinking. Move in with me. Here. You're here most weekends anyway. Sophia's eyes widened. That's a big step. There are practical considerations, my office. The other farmers' perceptions. All logistics. Ethan countered. Do you want to? I do, she said. But rushing could complicate things. Let's compromise. I'll keep my apartment but make this home base after the new year. We'll adjust? Let my PR team handle the news. Ethan smiled. No separate bedrooms for appearances when your board visits. Agreed. No pretense. She sealed it with a kiss. As winter turned to spring, Sophia transitioned to living primarily at the farm. Challenges arose her travel. His long days, but moments of rightness outweighed them. Sophia in the garden at dawn. Working side by side, planning the farm's future. The Peterson property became a thriving heritage museum. Complementing the farm, 2 weeks before their wedding, Sophia's parents visited. Elliot and Margaret Wentworth were polite but uncomfortable, their urban Polish clashing with the rural setting. Dinner was tense until Sophia steered the conversation to the program's economic success, engaging her parents' business instincts. By the end, Elliot admitted, "You've created something remarkable, not what I expected." The wedding, a harvest celebration under the ancient oak, blended their world's farmers, executives, and researchers united by shared values. Sophia's dress, handmade by Ellen Harper, was embroidered with heritage crops. Their vows promised not just love, but a commitment to their shared mission. As summer brought another harvest, the farm thrived. Its ecosystem balanced in the ways Ethan hadn't seen in years. One evening, Sophia led him to a stone marker near the oak, inscribed, James Caldwell, preserving 6 generations. Your grandfather's corn is the cornerstone of our climate resilience project, she said. Emotion tightened Ethan's throat. You didn't tell me. Wanted it to be a surprise. She slipped her arm around him. You preserved this when there was no reason to. That deserves recognition. Ethan reached into his pocket, pulling out his grandmother's ring box. I had a speech about how you saw value in what I thought was failing, how you helped reveal what this place could be. He opened the box, revealing a gold band with diamonds like planted fields. I love you. Sophia Because you understood why this was worth saving. Will you marry me? Her hands trembled as she took the box. Yes, she said, eyes bright. Not because it's sensible, but because I can't imagine my future without you. They sealed it with a kiss. The farm spreading around them, a testament to tradition and innovation. Past and future, love and purpose. Hey, folks, if you enjoyed Ethan and Sophia's story, hit that subscribe button for one kind moment. Let me know in the comments where you're watching from. Let's keep spreading stories of hope and heart.